Good afternoon, guys. So we're going to be looking at task 1 for communication. So your task 1 for interpersonal communication is a presentation you're going to be doing. So you're going to be doing the assess criteria 1.1 and 1.2. Let me just make this a little bit bigger for you. Okay. So your 1.1, 1.2, so you have the evaluate, the methods of interpersonal interaction, so you have language, signing, personal contact, body language, and we also have the explain the factors affecting communication. Okay, so these are the two assessed criteria that you're going to be doing in your group presentation. So I've kept this very brief because your tutor is going to guide you more in the classroom for how the presentation is to be structured. Okay, but just to touch base on how it needs to be laid out, you're going to define communication. So I want a definition of communication in your presentation. It must not come from Wikipedia, or it must not come from business balls. We want reliable sources. So this morning I saw students with Pamela Trevithick book looking at communication and what it is. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. So once you've got your first slide of what communication is, you then need to be looking at the methods of communication. So as it says on the slide there, you've got language, which could be verbal, it could be non-verbal language. So we need language because we can understand people, we can make sense of situations people are having, which will help us with our assessment. But obviously a weakness of maybe like verbal language is not everybody likes to communicate, not everybody, you've got your slang, some people use slang, so you've got different languages, people interpret words differently, so that can make it very difficult for us when working with clients. So you've got the language, you have sign language, so signing could be hand gestures, or it could be, someone's got hair impairment, it could be doing sign language. So it's great that as workers we can obviously pick up the skills for sign language, but not everybody is able to kind of adopt that and have been trained in that. So sometimes you may have to have sort of translators or people come in to make sure their communication methods are being met. Personal contact could be one-to-one meetings that we do. It could be obviously touching someone, so handshaking them. So you have to be very, very careful with personal contact. So because obviously it's good to enhance the relationship, but it's something you need to think about sensitively because you don't want to be accused of something that you want to do. So you've got your ethical aspect you need to carefully think about when it comes to personal contact. Body language, so we have obviously this, so crossed arms going on. We may have obviously, I feel nervous, so if you're nervous you might bite on your nails. It could be how you sit on a chair, it could be your body posture, your facial expressions. That's all part of the body language. So that is kind of your non-verbal communication. So in some books they say that first impressions count. So before you hear somebody talking, you kind of try to sum up a person by obviously the first minute you met them. So obviously that's part of your non-verbal communication there. People read quite heavily into that. So the strength of that is if we get it right, we will have a good relationship with the client. Hopefully it will take off very well, they'll trust us, they'll have faith in us. A weakness could be that if we're not very reflective and we're not very self-aware of how we present ourselves, it can cause obviously complications later in the rapport to build with the client. So there's some of the evaluations. The key thing is evaluate. Your next is explaining factors influencing interaction we have. So we have space, distance, we've got cultural, ethnic influences, and we have barriers to communication. So I'm just going to give you an example now of when I used to work with a client with learning disability. He was wheelchair bound, he couldn't verbally communicate, he couldn't move his legs or his arms. So some people may say he's got no form of communication. That's not true. You know, everybody is able to communicate. It's a matter of us thinking creatively how we can do that. So with this particular client, we used to use a communication board. So we had the alphabet on there and the words yes and no at the bottom. So for me communicating with him, I used to move my finger across the board and used to shake his head to which letter we wanted to use. So what I'm trying to say is it was very slow, but I was able to, because he was able to understand the alphabet and spell, we used to pick up the words what he wanted to say. You know, so because he could verbally communicate it, we could do that by me obviously using a board and looking at the letters he wanted to put together a sentence. So everybody has a form of communication. It's not just because that one person cannot talk or move his arms, he's got no form. He does have a form. It's a matter of us being creative. So finger spelling we could do, you know, him actually sticking his tongue out to yes or no, we can pick out what he's trying to say. So it's really, really important that we're very, very creative and innovative when working with clients. So cultural differences, just to finish this off. Lots of people come from all over the world who might live in England. So in London, I had students where it's part of their belief that it was they thought it's seen as a sign of respect to have their face down when talking to a man, so because it was seems polite to the other sex. So although here we may say that that person being quite rude, they're putting their head down to us when we're talking. For them, it was a sign of respect to other people, to men, that they did that. So that's another example about culture that, you know, sets our beliefs and obviously it will in turn affect the communication we have. So obviously different cultures, different beliefs, different outlooks that will affect communication. So your PowerPoint, just to sum it up, is you'll have your definition of communication, you'll have 3 methods that you need to evaluate for communication, you'll say what they are, you'll have the strength and the weakness of the communication method. So that's very, very important because this task does require you to evaluate. You then have your influences, where you'll be looking at 3 to 4 influences that affect communication. Okay, so kind of it, obviously having medication, you know, it's going to maybe affect them, make them feel more drowsy, more tired than they should do, so that might in turn affect what they're able to say, not say. You space another one, and then finally, it's not wrote on here, but I want you to put a case study in at the end of your PowerPoint because that's your application of learning. So for this task, we do want to see application. Okay, so you're doing your case study, you're applying all this knowledge and you're putting it into a case study. So that case study should have some kind of challenging aspect of communication, which you might try and problem solve at the end of it. So, i.e., a client is being quite challenging with the worker, they put maybe a complaint in, what happens when that complaint's been put in. It might be that you might want to review the patient's care plan and look at how they communicate in a much better, more coherent way. So I do want to see a short case study there, along with references at the end. So please make sure you save your work on your member sticks, you've all got a copy of it, because it's quite common that sometimes students don't turn up for the presentation and that lets everybody else down. So please make sure you've all got backup of this. Good luck.